Yahoo! Prof here, and we're got a quick one for y'all because I got to do some packing up there. If you can't tell, oh, that arm is awkward. That's better. What do we have for you guys today? Who recognizes that type of packaging? You're wrong. Well, maybe you're right. Who knows? But you're probably wrong, because this is a new line of products from an existing manufacturer. We got out Bob box cutter with a Fisker's blade in it. And what do we have in here but Keros's new pen. The Everyday Keros Basic.001. And it looks to be a thick boy. This is the same packaging. They're not doing their normal cardboard plus foam packaging. They are doing this apparently this tube like that reminds me of what the TI2 pens come in, like these guys here. But it's not this style pen. If anything, it is a very cost conscious version of the modal. We need another modal. There's another modal. There's another modal. There's two kinds of modals. If we need more modals, I guess let me know down in the comments. I'll have to go get out some more modals. So I consider it like a cost conscious. We are really low on light for some reason. Let's get some more light. Wow. Everyday Keros. Apparently I've been working on this since past 13 years. Build it for life. I've been planning this specific one since 2017. If I recall correctly, these are only $30. That's what I was trying to locate for you. Wait, do they actually have Anniversary Fire pocket cubes in stock? Oh, jeez. 1 second here. So I will be buying Anniversary Fire pocket cube if they have them in stock. Breaking news, blah, blah, blah. America's on red. It hurt your eyes only. No, that's not it. Saturday special. Oh, they had a special 30% off bolts last Saturday, apparently. I didn't know that. Pen, or maybe I have it saved. Pen club code. Of course, I'm signed out of my password manager, right? Alright, why aren't we typing? Why aren't we fucking typing? Because the keyboard wasn't connected. That's why. Pen club, copy, paste, enter, back. Yeah. It lists it as in stock, but it's not. Everyday Keros.com. I believe you guys can finally buy it yourself. It also may be broken because I use Firefox. Yeah, $29. I, however, bought the... So $29 for this guy. the most basic version of the modal, I believe, is, I should look this up while I was on Karos's website. Karos Customs, I think it's $60 for a modal. The basic B standard edition modal is, these are all special releases. Here, pocket modal, no. Normal, do they even not have any normal modals? 85, 120, 80. Writing instruments, modal. New, yep. Where's the stock one? Apparently out of stock modals. What is a pocket modal new? $70. I thought it was 60 for like the very basest price of a modal. I might be wrong there. You can get them cheaper if you buy them on a sale or a special or not much cheaper than that. Especially normally what you'll do is you'll be able to get a higher end, fancier one, right? Like this one with this Ultim insert here. This is the, I think something fog. I've made a video on it. I picked it up because it had the, I think they call this one the dragon skin grip, and I didn't have another pen with it, and it was on a good discount. This is the new textured one where they're trying out their almost tactile turn-like texture there. I think I just showed it better on camera there than I did in the entire video actually on the pen. So this is sort of in competition with the modal. This is the Everyday Karos Basic 0101, however you want to say that. And it is definitely thicker. It's also much, much simpler. So I don't know if they were using the textured finish to see how people would like it. Here is my second, this is like batch 3, I think, of the Cerakote render case. If you look, this was one of the first models that had the texture on this foregrip of the render case. And I haven't had a render case since the original. I just had no reason to. But when I saw this, and it was in this sunflower color, which they did a whole batch of basically every other pen. The Bolt, the EDK, the Ink V2, and I think they're considering doing the modal in this. And I had them in my cart, but because I was at work on the VPN, it blocked me. Womp womp. And they all sold out because this is an awesome color. I am on the list, though. Like, it sold out so quickly, even though it was a Pen Club exclusive, they took pre-orders for the Pen Club. Yeah, that's pretty intense. So this is the first one I know that they went with the textured grip. Then they just did what I just showed you. This one, it's not even just the grip. Originally, I thought it was the whole thing is this textured finish. And I wondered, like, I feel like it is like a little bit grippier, but they could have actually made it even more textured. It also makes it a bit more smoky instead of as translucent as it was, right? So the basic 01, gotta remember, I bought the subscription. It's like a quarterly subscription. I think what they mean there is not that the subscription happens. Maybe the subscription itself happens quarterly, but the actual subscription is over a quarter. Okay, so the first one just happened in April here. And this is the basic 01. Pretty similar, actually, to, imagine the dragon skin, I believe this is, without the little scallops, right? It's just dragon skin, no scallops. That sounds like a food dish. This is actually really smooth. The one thing to note about all of these basic 01 ones, and I might be able to hook some guys at work with them, is it is $29, right? You're like, dang, if a modal is, you can see it's a little less svelte, probably because the stock that they were machining down from is this thickness, and they just took enough off to make the pen itself. The other thing, this is nice anodizing, right? or you can get like, you know, maybe you want an Ultim one, or you want a brass one or a copper one. This is just raw, and you can feel it on your fingers because it's not even anodized, so you get a little bit of that. Aluminum oxidizes just being out in the air. That's where you get that white sort of powdery coating on aluminum that is not anodized. That's part of the reason why anodizing aluminum makes it harder and more chemical resistant, especially to your and my hands, which are, humans are nasty. Okay, that's why my trackball's not working right now. But this is $29, so you do not get that with it. The other thing I noticed is it almost looks like it has the textured finish. So I wonder if they were using this, but it's not. That is way less textured than that. Maybe not. Let's hold both these up. What do you think, guys? I feel like this is less defined than that. But I feel like they were doing tests. Now, they might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but they might have been doing tests to see, because this is actually a less finished part to have that. You can also see on the tip, it's very notchy, like it's like ka-tunk, 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 ka-tunk. That means there's less definition in the machining operations, like it's a rougher pass. You can also see on the inside of these grooves here, it's like ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. You know, so it's like 4 steps, like 4 hard steps, rather than, you know, you look at something like this dragon skin here, which is the closest one I think I have, and it is beautifully smooth and finished. So I mean, I might be wrong, but this is probably there's going to be at least one more pass of machining over this to take out, because this wouldn't be able to be tumbled off, like those ridges in there. So I have to imagine they cut it down to this with a certain size mill, and then they normally finish it past this, right? Take it down another step, right? And then they would tumble them and polish them, and then they would get them finished, either Cerakoted or that's another thing I could have shown you is a Cerakote bolt or modal. I have a bolt, I believe, same color as the modal, very similar to that. The Monster. This thing's finish is amazing. This is like this nice matte. That green is the wrong color. It is much more green and less blue in real life. Green is a color that all cameras and monitors have issues with because of how our eyes see green more. That's often why in monitors you'll see in cameras you'll see 2 green pixels for every red and blue one. And I think I've adjusted the camera before to like change the color temp to kind of fix this one. But if you see, this finish is like beautifully smooth. Like it's actually hard for the camera to focus on it because there's nothing. Yeah, like it's so smooth, so well done. This is my Monster modal. So that would be a, you know, here I with this, I'm not at a loss for words here, but they're simplifying, like, how do they get it down to $29? If these are at the cheapest, if you just have a purely anodized one, like $60-$70 at a minimum. I think even the raw aluminum one it might be 60, and then as soon as you anodize it all, it's another $10, roughly in my head. So what they're doing is they're literally, how do you drop it even further? Well, you limit your machine operations. So if this is an acceptable finish for a bulk of the users to hit a wider user base, you just do less work. The other thing, if you're noticing, this does not come apart, and you're like, well, how do you, like here, if you look, all of these have a seam right in the middle. You can change your ink out like a normal pen would be, right? Or some of them, if you look at tactile turn, which one do we want from tactile turn? Sure. We will do the Whataburger because you guys like the Whataburger. Here's the Whataburger, right? And theirs is way at the tip. The only one that isn't away at the tip for tactile turn is their smooth operator, especially their Gen 2. See? So that works as expected, the way it should. And you screw that back down and on there. Well, if you notice, these here, this one, the basic and all of the other basic ones, they're one piece. Well, how do you get a refill in it? It's not it's 30 pen. It's not throw away. Yep, indeed. You actually take out the bolt. So you see the bolt, and I give it a pretty big head on the side here, rather than, we've gone over, I believe, in other videos how complex, because we can go over it better on the Ultim or the Delrin versions, how complex this is, and how Keras actually fixed some stuff that Tactile Turn had issues with, especially on the first gen smooth operator, right? Because this goes in sideways into the plastic, and then the screw actually comes up from the top here and screws into the metal of the bolt. That way, the actual bolt, we'll call this the bolt knob, the bolt handle. That way, the actual bolt sleeve or the bolt carrier here itself can be plastic without any issues, right? What ends up happening up here though is that the bolt itself in there, or the bolt carrier, is actually notched. And I don't know if I'll be able to show it on this one, but because there's this ka-chunk out here and there's screws for the clip that are up in here as well, right? So they actually have to machine the top of this bolt to notch out. On some of the Tactile Turns or older Keras's, the notches on this side, because the screws go in this way and they slightly penetrate this, right? So you actually have to notch it so it can turn. So like the top of it's like 2/3, 1/3, like there's a face, right? That's like canted. So when you turn it, it still has room for those screws to go through, right? Hopefully you guys are getting that from the cat fur that is in the camera right now. If you ever want to know what Paisley's fur looks like up close, you just saw it. Now this is different in that I think not only did they not mill down the stock as far as they possibly could, but, oh, Paisley's on my shoulder. Hey, Paisley. If you notice, they actually left it thick enough to just be able to put the screws into here. The screws then do not penetrate into the area where the bolt carrier is. What that means is that it's got this flat top here, right? They could very easily make this into their classic bolt with the thing on top where you go like that. But they went with their check mark, their newer check mark style of... Paisley, what are you doing? No, you don't get to go on the armrest. Paisley. Paisley. Hey. You want to sit in my lap? You can do that. Come here. Come here. I still gotta shoot the video. With the guys and the gals, yeah. Yeah, are you happier now? Still not happy, but happier. So what they did here, though, is because to have the screws here just be able to screw it on and not interfere with anything in here, right? They just made sure that that aluminum was thick enough to tap and thread it. How you actually change the refill on this, and you have to be really careful because this looks like it's Delrin or Ultim, is you actually just unscrew the bolt handle. Probably put your fingy over this, because otherwise it's going to launch itself out. There we go. Hopefully you can get replacement ones of these. Even this is super, like they did put this divot on top for kind of like stylization, I'm guessing, and so you know what direction it goes, right? Because there's a flat side on this side. But otherwise, that is just a chunk of, I don't know if it's Delrin or Ultim. I could probably look. But then they made this bolt handle very, very coarse, and it almost looks like because you can see a step there where it's not threaded all the way back here, right? That's so that you can't actually thread it too far in, because otherwise it'll keep pulling and pulling and pulling itself in, right? But it looks a lot like a thumb screw, right? When you do this, I would, if you can, once it's back in the screw, go backwards to make sure you're catching the thread, because the reason why it's so important is that you're screwing metal into plastic. You're going to run into a similar thing that Tactile Turn ran into when they screwed their bolts into the side here of the Ultim slider on their original smooth operator. Cracked them right in half. Now, to me, this looks like a much coarser thread on here, right? And they did this where they put the gap here, kind of like on a thumb screw, right? And it's a much thinner gauge screw than what was on the Tactile Turn, because Tactile Turn was just using their standard bolt that they have in all their metal pens. Then if you go like this, you get your G2 ink, and you get your, this is not a G2 spring because it doesn't have the double, the OG G2s are doubled up here and doubled up here. Keras, to save money, I think doesn't use like, they'll just buy these generic ones in bulk. That's what's in all of these pens. The one thing that I thought I would note too is the angle of the check mark is much more shallow. Do you see that? So the travel you have left to right is greater, but the actual check mark, you can see here, the height on the bottom of the check is taller than it is here. And part of that might have to do with the fact that this is this oblong bolt that is actually really nice to handle, right? Whereas here you have more of just a circular track, and it's not beveled and chamfered. It's just straight, right? So that's how they brought the cost on this down so far. Is it is just a bar stock hollowed out, and you can see the steps where it goes near, and I can see that inside of here, where it's very obvious. Like if they were to make this out of that clear Ultim, you'd see step, step, step. Oh, I got back out once. Okay, so if you did it here, you'd see step, 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 because what they're doing is they're going down to a certain thing, backing out, down, or there might just also be going down, wait, down, wait, down, wait. Generally, they try to back out to clean out the insides here, but like it's very obvious on the inside how this was. Like you can see the different steps they milled it in, right? And not that that's bad. Remember, $30 pen, so they're $29 pen. Now you can get them even cheaper. I don't know if that's still available, but you can get a subscription. I was on there because I actually beta tested the Everyday Keras. That's where the original Pen Club Ultim pen was, like originally, like way back. And they gave you a deal basically for testing out their new site for them. So I've already used the new site. I don't know, it was probably over a year ago at this point, or about a year ago. So they've been planning this for quite a while. But I think to have a nice quality pen like this for $29 is worth it. If you do get in the subscription, I believe the subscription was $100, and you get 4 pens, and the 4th pen is an anodized one. They are doing one that they're calling their executive. It's not the basic, it's the executive 01. So it's gonna be basic 01, 02, 03. And then there will be an executive one. I believe that one is exclusive to the people who have the subscription. It's basic 001. So I guess they plan on doing like getting into the hundreds of these. They say flagship pen. I would guess that would be for the everyday Karas because they made a new brand instead of using Karas Customs or Karas Penco. Black Delrin piston, they call it. There you go. Stainless steel clip. The clip looks the same as it does on an EDK, except they changed it up from a Allen to a Torx. I believe they've done that recently on some other pens. Torx is a better bit anyway, so that's not, that's kind of understandable. We need to go get, kitten, we need to get the refill. Can I get the up? You are shedding. Holy jeez. Yeah. When she sheds and I pet her, she's like, oh, that's so good. Feels so good. And I'm just getting covered in fur. And it's kind of fun because every time I look at her, she's really enjoying the pets, and then I realize why. It's because she's shedding all over me. So, this is designed for a Pilot G2. That's what came in it, right? We're going to try and stuff in Uniball. In this case, the Muji Uniballs are ever so slightly smaller. Shorter, I should say. So, and we gotta put our little bolt guy in there. Ooh, yeah. If you see, that's flush. I might want to sand off. I still got the rubber piece on it, but that is flush right there. So it's just like the modal. They really have designed it just on the edge of even being able to use the G2 refill, much less a Uniball one. I kind of really wish they would take that more into consideration. Yeah, you can see with how far that comes out. That. And no, I didn't put the bolt all the way in because I'm going to have to pull it out just to take a wisp off that. It does technically fit, and I think we found that with the modal as well. However, I wouldn't consider that safe for pocket carry because, like, even touching your finger on that, if I take that rubber off or that plastic or that dip that's on there, that would mark up your finger, which then would mark up things in your pocket if it was in your pocket. Yeah, I would highly recommend putting your pointer finger over this as you unscrew this. Otherwise, I have a feeling this part would just launch itself across the room. You can even hear when you're putting this in and out that it's pretty rough. I don't know if that comes across on camera very well or not. So I'm going to put back this Muji refill because if I have to modify it, I might as well just modify a Uniball because the whole point of using the Mujis is that I can throw them in the tactile turn bolt pens and not have to cut anything down, not have to shorten anything up. We also have a I do have some clip pens. I don't think those would fare any better. I got some. Am I out of juices? Yeah, it must be out of juice pens. Not juice ups. Got plenty of those. I just bought a box. That's pen parts. Protect turn. That's pen parts for Keras. That's pen parts for switch and knives. Yeah, so I think I must be out of juice. Juice pens. Ugh. The other one I considered trying is the Muji Click, which uses a brain zebra refill. There's the brain kicking in. It's got to ramp up, you know. And yes, I do keep the juice around because there are certain pens. Here's one. You really can't use the TI2 design. I mean, that's fine too. Because it actually uses the metal tip of the pen to give you rigidity and write with, right? So if you have one of the plastic tipped ones, like a juice up, it gets all wobbly. And I don't like that. So that's why I keep juice around, because I really don't like. I mean, if you're like, oh, you got to use a ballpoint pen or a G2, I would probably take the G2 over that, like a Pilot G2, depending on the ballpoint. If it's like a Jetstream, maybe not. I think that's good enough. You guys think that's enough clearance? That's with the Zebra. Let's go to 1x because it can macro properly then. I guess that 2x did do a fine job of macro. But I don't think the tip's gonna show on the Zebra. So Zebra is also a Euro 110 refill, just like Uniball, but slightly different dimensions. Some of you that might be too close to comfort, too close for comfort. But here, I can put my, even putting my fingy on it like that and having the pen itself doesn't make a mark on my finger. As I give you guys the finger, teehee. So yeah, I guess I didn't really have a use for it. I just wanted to try out because people said, oh, the Muji pens are so good. They're the best pens. And I'm like, okay, these are mostly pen people, not saying it. Also in the age demographic, it was mostly people at colleges. So buying them for like college stationery. I wonder why they're quote unquote so good. And I think we found out why, right? The reason why is that the stick pen Mujis, and a lot of people are claiming like, oh, they changed the ink. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Here's the other thing is the Click refills that use the Zebra refills, or I believe to be Zebra refills. That pink that I took off this little ball, that is a classic Zebra. Also how it's notated on the refill itself, classic Zebra. And the stick pens, those that is a Uniball refill. So I think that's for some of the people saying like, oh, Muji changed their refills. No, they didn't. It's the stick ones have one brand. Oh, we got a bit on smaller Snap-on. The stick refills have one brand, and the Click have another. Also, the Click are 0.3, whereas the stick are 0.38 because for whatever reason, Uniball, they don't do like a 0.3, they do a 0.28. They don't do a 0.4, they do a 0.38. That's just, and it goes to 0.5. I rock the 0.38. That is very close to like, I often wrote with a 0.4 Hi-Tec-C. Originally wrote with a 0.5 rot ring, I believe it's called. Then a 0.4. My 0.4 actually wore out because I used it so much. They were out of 0.4s and they replaced it with a 0.35. Beautiful right there. I tried switching to 0.3 because in many of these Euro 110 style, that is actually a more common size. Like a 0.3 is a more common size than like a 0.4 or 0.38, you know, 0.4 equivalent. And 0.3 writes too scratchy, too small. So that might be some of the complaints here, is that the stick or the click 0.3 is actually significantly smaller than the stick version. But I have these in one of my other pens. It does seem to, at least the dimensions, even though it's a Euro 110, like I said, if you look, the tip is sitting back much further than it did on the Muji. And you remember the Muji is already a hair bit shorter than on the, like an OG, like an actual Uniball refill. I don't know why that is. I think it uses an older design of Uniball refill as its basis. But yeah, so this is what I'll be rocking. Here, got me some new. These are the new super sticky notes. Annoyingly, they're not the full stick. You see this? Maybe this is just me. The stick is only like that and up now on Post-it notes. And you guys that think I'm insane, here's a more than 10-year-old set that I still had upstairs. Because 10 years ago, going on 11, I switched to full stick, super sticky, from the super sticky to the full stick. If you look at on these super sticky, they go to there. On the new super sticky, they're about half as much adhesive. Now they do stick way better than even the full stick Muji notes, in my opinion. And they just got that glue right. And the paper, because you're not writing, as long as you stay off this top row, especially, but even then it still writes fine. Like it writes fine here, but it writes much nicer down here. And this is a new refill, so there you go. See, it came right up. Having because this is a thicker pen, it is thicker than a modal, for those wondering. Considerably thicker than a modal, but it is not as thick as something like a thick tactile turn, like this Micarta tactile turn here. This has the stick Muji, as you can see, fits perfectly. There, you can't even see the tip when it's retracted. And then when it comes out, that is near perfection. It is not as thick as, but for those that have thick tactile turn and prefer a little bit thicker pen, like if I'm going to get a bolt from tactile turn, I either want the thick or the thin, like the skinny. The standard size, which I really like, as you saw with the Whataburger, this is a standard thickness side click. I think that is the best side click, personally. But for the bolts, I really do prefer either the thin, like this Carryology, and I missed the limited edition Carryology. That was like, I don't know, 50 units or something like that, not less. And I prefer either thick or thin. The standard, not my jam for the, like if you're giving me one, you know, of those three options, I'd take the thick, then the thin, then the standard. And the standard would be like a fourth. It's not even really a third. But I believe this is technically shorter than a modal. Yes. By a wisp of a hair. And what it's actually shorter than a modal by, zoom on in, 5x, is the mount for the clip. Do you see this little bit right up there? That is how much shorter it is than a modal. Is that little mount for the clip. because the clip isn't top mounted through the top like that. It just has 2 screws banging into the side because the external material is thick enough. Right. And I wouldn't know without measuring like with a caliper, but I wouldn't be surprised if this internal right there would be the thickness of a standard modal. Like there. So that's all extra. Double that up. You got plenty of room for that. The one thing I'm going to tell you guys, and hopefully, I imagine because they're just pieces of plastic, they will have plenty, is really be careful. Like, this would not be a pen. Like, sometimes Squeers and I, we constantly swap out. Like, we're trying out refills, right? So you're going in here and you're unscrewing, you're rescrewing, and you're swapping out refills. You'll see me, or even test fit refills. Careful with this because you are threading, each time you swap a refill out, you are threading this aluminum harder metal into Delrin insert there. Now they countersunk that. They also made the bolt to where it won't pull itself like it stops. It wants to stop because the threading is only so far, right? And it's also very squared off at a certain point where it's actually flat. So once you get it in far enough, it shouldn't keep trying to pull itself through the bolt and crack the bolt. But do run the threads backwards like you do on a PC case, like with a screw that's already pre-threaded, because you don't want to keep hitting different threads. If you hit any resistance, I would back out the screw and try and re-put it in. Otherwise, basically, you're going to do what happens to computer case fans when you put metal screws in them. And if you don't put them back in the same threads, you keep cutting more threads and more threads and more threads, and eventually there's no plastic left, and you just pull the plug out basically of what that screw is going in, and then you got to switch to bolts or those they have like silicone little pegs you pull through that hold it in, because the hole is actually bigger than what a standard fan screw is. That's what'll happen here, and that's why I'm saying hopefully they make available these little plastic bits if that happens to people. It should be something you know going in, as in just be careful. I mean, it should take you quite a bit to go through a refill. And as long as you're not playing around with, like, once you figure out what refill you want and if it fits, just run it. Run until she dies. But I bet that I can get, I noticed right away that this is so much more pointy, because it's a 0.3, not a 0.38 that I'm used to. Like I'm used to. That it's much scratchier. The other thing that I may have to go back in and do is, we've been over this before, why I cut the notch in the side of the refills. And I didn't do it in this case, and I maybe should have. On a G2, they actually put this cap on the end here that has this slot. What that allows for is, if you take it and put it up against something flush, the refill can still breathe. And you're like, why does the refill need to breathe? Well, the reason it needs to breathe is because what advances the gel ink is atmospheric pressure. It will not flow properly if it's cut off. And that is also why, like, if you look at the back of this cap here, you actually see there's like, I don't know if it's going to show, but there's actually air vents in the cap. Like this little, if you see the venting around here, right? That's actually all open, and you can see through here, like the mechanism, right? That's because, and you're like, well, why would you want to let air into this side? But you know, like, you always have caps to make the tip not dry out. But yeah, that's correct. But with gel, you have another issue, and this is why most of any of the good refills will come with this little plastic doodle on the end, and that is because when this is off, what ends up happening, especially when you start tip down, right, is air comes in the tip if there's not a cap on it covering it. That's what the cap does, is it basically acts as that little ball of wax, plastic, whatever you want to call it, right? So the cap covers that and prevents air from going this way, and atmospheric pressure is pushing on it that way, right? Now, a lot of these custom metal pens, because they're not capped, they're click style. If you let them sit like I do, because I have way too many, eventually what'll happen is air comes through this way, like tip up, because you store them tip down, because it's just how they store generally. Don't store a Hi-Tec-C that way. It will vomit itself everywhere. Just a heads up there. But these other ones mostly are fine with it, except what happens is air bubbles come up through it this way and start separating the ink from the gel. They'll push the gel up. Now, what you can do to try and counteract that is blow, like, because there's going to be a hole on the end here. There's a little hole here, or a lot of the Euro 110s are just wide open. You can actually push it back down in there, right? Or you just live with it and you just use it as it is, because most times they'll still write fine. And if you pick up a pen and it's like that, well, you haven't used it. You haven't used it in too long. It feels bad. Make it feel better. Use it more often. But that is why this is capped off, is because they actually don't want air going this way, because air pressure is supposed to go this way. That's why it's blocked off, and then that will push the ink out. Now, what I'm going to have to do is, now that I know that this refill fits, is take this off, and I'll show you why in a second here, because this, and I can guarantee they're not going to do it for their basic pen, because that is another milling step for this bolt here. But if you take this and you perfectly line it up with that, you've capped it off. No air, and that might be why we're getting even a scratchier and a little bit uneven running from this refill, is because you need air pressure to push, your standard atmospheric barometric pressure, push this way to get that ink to come out. It's kind of like, for those that, I should say, for those that use a straw. You all have used a straw. How a straw works is you're actually removing pressure, right, from the straw, so that the atmospheric pressure in your cup actually pushes the drink up, is what's happening. Now, if you actually suck like a pump would, then you're also pulling the liquid up. But normally how you start out drinking with a straw, that actually, unless you got like some really thick stuff, or you think of a standard, you're going, I was going to say, you get your Hi-Tec-C at McDonald's. Your Hi-C orange. You get your Hi-C orange drink. Imagine you're 8 again. You convinced your parent to get you McDonald's, and you're drinking your Hi-C orange drink, right? And you drink it, and what you're doing is you're actually removing the air pressure from the straw, and then the outside pressure pushes down and pushes it up. Now you can drink it even faster once it gets started. But what's a similar thing is happening here, as in atmospheric pressure pushes on here and advances the ink down. So when you cap it off, like this effectively is, you're not going to get proper flow. That is why on the G2 refill, there is a slot cut in here. You see there? And we can actually go and grab another pen. I know we're off of the basic, but this is why I notched these out. I was wondering. We need a pen type C. My Orange Boy pen type C we're going to grab. So, Orange Boy pen type C. We need a coin to take this off, or a coin-esque object. Let's see if this will work. Here's my pry tool. Oh yeah, by the way, this thing's gotten a couple more. Downside of Cerakote is you hit something harder than it and you get little chips. Now this tube, and you're like, why are they always on the end? Because I hold it like this and I go bonk, because I'm a clumsy oaf. But this feels so good. The finish. I'm glad I could get mine in. They basically had too many orders originally. Here is the pry bar from, this is actually a cutoff that Keros Customs uses. I'm just going to use this to take this out. So, over at CW&T, they know what I'm talking about, as they, see there's no hole back here, right? But they cut a slot there. And that is so that this can never cap it off. They knew what they were doing. How I fixed my original Render K, all 4 of them, because I had original, that was part of the Kickstarter. Then I bought the brass, the copper, and the bar stock versions. How I fixed all of those was by drilling a small hole using a Dremel in its butt. Similar to that little hole there, because of how the original Render K sealed. It had no air that goes here, right? Then the other thing is, because you're like, yeah, but they have like a rubber seal at CW&T here and no hole. Yeah, you can get air, and I still notched it because I'm in the habit of doing that. Not a bad thing, but the design of CW&T means you don't have to. Also, if you can see how uneven this cut is, that's not me. That's how Hi-Tec-C comes from the factory. They don't give a shit. You can see how thin the wall is on a Hi-Tec-C versus that's a Euro 110 style. This is the Zebra. Even thicker on a lot of Uniballs. Now this can change too. The thinner tip you get, right, the smaller the hole is. Now, I don't know if that's because they want to average out the amount of lifespan you get out of a refill, so you don't get way more time out of a 0.28 than a 0.5 or a point, like that sort of thing. Or if it's actually relevant to like surface area, as in like how much width they need on this pushing down to deliver the correct amount of flow to write properly with. I don't know if you guys know engineering of ink cartridges, if this is just to average out like the amount of ink in there for the tip, as in, so that in the end they about write the same amount based on, you do 0.3 over a certain distance versus 0.5 over a certain distance. This diameter makes them the same amount of ink distance-wise, or does it have something to do about delivering, like having enough like surface and delivering enough ink out? I don't know if that's even how that would work. But then the next thing on here would be, if you look at CW&T, they put these little notches on their tip piece that goes over the Hi-Tec-C. And then I don't know that they never mentioned you had to do this, but I always line those up with, there's 4 notches around the tip of the Hi-Tec-C refill. I always line up those, they're opposing each other, but I always line them up with 2 of the notches. That way, when this is, if you look, this is a hex shape, not a circle. It's like broached, right? It will breathe. To this day, the pen type A and B, this is a pen type B in titanium with that orange Cerakote. So you can see that that's broached. So it's not a circle, but like a hex. So you can actually get air in this, even though the back isn't open. That is something where other pen makers, and it's been improved over time by CW&T, but even my pen type A I could go and grab right now. And you can see that doesn't fully seal around there. Gets close. Don't need much. But they actually took that into account, and this thing writes, it was in there for a while, perfectly, immediately, every time. The other thing that they do is way in the bottom of this, on the original pen type A didn't have this, but all the newer ones do. They have a rubber stopper like you would have in the cap of a standard pen type B, or Hi-Tec-C pen, so that when this goes in, it actually does cap itself off to not let air in. Which, for this needle point, ink cartridge that actually has like, you see like venting on the sides and stuff. That actually has to go in pretty deep to fully seal off. But way down in here, maybe I can get it with a flashlight. There is, that's the ring magnet, and then way in there, at the very bottom, there's a little ball. I don't know if it's silicone or rubber or what it is, but there you go. That caps that off. So they really did engineer it, and a lot of these other, as much as I like them, a lot of these other brands do kind of ignore it, because for the most part, as long as you use the pen frequently enough, and you'll just run the ink out before it's probably truly going to matter. So that's just something to keep in mind. And the reason why that whole thing was there is because if I'm going to use this Zebra, even though it says Muji, for those that know Zebra, you can see this sort of like opaque, not fully transparent, more translucent sort of plastic back here, and how this is noted. That is very much a Zebra, especially with that rubber that we talked about, where it matches their style exactly. If you're going to use like a Zebra on there, this, if I just take this and I go like that on here, that is going to seal that off, and that's probably why we were getting poor flow. So I just cut a V-notch in the side that lets air in. On some of them, I have cut sometimes too big of a hole in some. You kind of gotta see, this writes already better just as a refill than it did in that body. So that's and this is something I learned, I don't know, a long time ago. Like, we're talking about when the original, like, would that have been around 2012 maybe, 2013, when the original Keras and the original TI2 pen, not the current TI2 Techliner, but the one that took the Hi-Tec-C and a bunch of these other ones came out, that they would cap off the end, or on the TI2 pen, it actually did have a hole at the back, but if you posted the cap, because it had a cap on this end, right, and if you took it just like this guy, right, obviously if you take this, and there's a nice hole on here, because that's not a magnet, right, on the original, there's a hole with O-rings, and you go like this, well, especially because there's O-rings there, that's now sealed. Your air cannot get in there. Now on these, there's basically enough play up front, and they use a washer back here instead of a perfectly flat surface. That these seem to be fine. Haven't had an issue. Now writing with the TI2 pen original without the cap posted, brilliant. I had to kind of figure that out. Also, it's set up to store the Hi-Tec-C refill tip down. If you walk around every day with your Hi-Tec-C tip this way, even in one like this that's sealed, I still put this in my pocket the wrong way. Because just from what I've found, these refills prefer to be stored either on their side at a desk like this. They love that, you know, like that right there, or they want to be tip up, and I know that's not where the nice rounded tip is and everything, but I just find that Hi-Tec-C, even if you're wondering, I've showed it before, they have a click style refill. It is in here, my Keras Render K, but this is a Hi-Tec-C, right? And it has, and they accounted for it, they have a hole like this that actually goes down to a smaller hole, right? That's sort of like a funnel. If you look at the what do you want to call that one? The VRT one. It is very similar with the butt action. And that's to not block it off. Here's the thing, though. There was never, this is the LHRF 15CA. Though it is a click style Hi-Tec-C refill, none of the stock pens that took this refill, and I gotta wipe that refill off before I put it away, and I'm gonna get it all over my hands. None of the pens that took that refill stock had the tip down, you know, like modal, tip down when in your pocket or being stored, right? They all were tip up. All of them. So that means they're either capped or they're like the weird fountain pen where the tip comes out of the top of it. Like there's a fountain pen where the clip's here and you write with it like this because the tip goes up. Like you go up and then you, I don't know if you flip it like that, but the tip comes out of where the clip is, not out of this end. But all of the Hi-Tec-C ones are capped. Even though I use the click style refill, they're all capped refills. And that is because that refill really, if you look at all the stick variants of it, and not even like a premium variant, they all have the tip up. So it's not even, because that type of ink and tip was not really designed to be a, like a tip down click style refill. It was adapted into that. But yeah, I'm going to take a chunk out of this refill. Heck, we can do it on stream. I think I just put a newer knife in here. Grab your utility knife. You can also use a X-Acto, but I think some of this is, I use utility knives more often, so I have more familiarity with them. Now this Zebra refill is a harder plastic than the Uniball from what I'm feeling here. And all you have to do, some of mine you'll see bigger, smaller, all you need is a little notch. Just like that. Now, put your knife away first before you stab yourself. Now, when you take this flat mating surface here, and you put it like that, look at that, air can get in. And what I would do if you end up still having flow issues is do one per side. As you saw, that is how you're like, well, why would you do that? Well, if you look, that like I said, that's how CW&T did it. They're accomplished engineer and designers. They probably have some amount of stuff that backs that up. You know what I mean? I've also, though, like I said, made the notch too big before, and then it gets goopy. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm not too worried about using up these sticky notes because these I can just go and buy. Yep. I don't know if you can tell it all, but that already writes much more smoothly. And it's just because it's not capped off. So, got a bit about the Keras. Oh, sorry, I was going to say Keras Customs. This is the Everyday Keras Basic 001, $29. Or you could buy the first quarterly subscription. I don't know if there will be further ones. For $100, which actually has 4 pens. In the quarterly subscription, shipping is included. I don't know about the individual pens themselves. I just went straight for the quarterly, and it's like, oh, why do you need 4 pens? I don't. I'm getting this original one. I believe David is getting the second one, or Squeers, he's getting the second one. He would have gotten this first one, but he doesn't like this. He'd prefer it be smooth, you know, like this, right? Or like the EDK has what that's called like a ringed grip. So it's just some very, very slight rings in the grip because it's a ringed grip. Here, a great example of a ringed grip would be like this. You know, except I think on the EDK it's way less than that. You know, yeah, but that is closer to just straight, right? He seems to like a straight, like not have undulations in his grip, right? And I could see that. You gotta throw some design in there though, you know, to keep it, to zest it up a little bit. So he's probably getting the basic 002. Should still have a video on it. Might happen from work instead of home, just because that's where he would be. And then there's the 03, and then they're doing an executive 01, which I don't know if that's this pen fancified, which is mostly just anodized, or if they're going to have a separate design or what there. The third design I don't believe is determined yet. It's TBD. So let me know what you guys think. I think for 30 bucks, pretty much everybody should pick up one or even two of these. Like if you're like, hey, should you pick up this or the Linus Tech Tips one? I believe that one's 30 bucks. Buy this one. You saw I can fit. It takes a G2, which is a much more, I shouldn't say much more standard. The Parker G2 refill, which is what the Linus Tech Tips take, is very standard, but you're very limited on the number of tips and refills you can get, whereas this is much more varied. I also, as I've gotten older, prefer the thicker pen. You know, like we're talking, this one is still pretty dang optimal with the pen type A and pen type B. A little bit shorter than a modal, which is 5 inches. The 5-inch mark is pretty optimal when it comes to length, and this comes in just a hair shorter, as we showed, than the modal. So sizing, ink compatibility, you may have to either take your utility knife or your X-Acto, like I showed you, and chop down a full-size Uniball, or if you have one that, because I showed you how the stick Muji, that it would have worked, but it was just a hair too long for me, whereas the click one was fine. If I would have used like a true Uniball, like I like the UMR 83E, I would have had to chop it off, or what I've been doing lately is actually just using a little bit of sandpaper and just wearing it down a little bit. Often that's enough to get by. It's just a little bit of boom, perfect. You know, sometimes depending if it's designed, truly designed, like if you go with the original tactile turn bolt, or technically not the original, but their current bolt, but the original version of it before they changed the mechanism a little bit, like they changed their shape. You actually had to cut 1 to 2 millimeters off the back of a Uniball refill in order to make it fit, and that's actually not due to the length of the refill. It's actually due to the dimensions of the tip, and I believe in another video I go over that. It's because of how long the metal part is on a Uniball versus a Pilot G2 style, and that on the G2, they have this step here that is not on. You saw the Euro 110s, they do not have that. It's just straight through. Now, why do all these brands then choose to do a Pilot G2? Well, America, baby. And this is the #1 refill in the US of A. At least for gel refills. Maybe overall even, to be truthful. I know people that swear by that G2, like, I will never use any other pen. And I'm like, dude, if you know enough to know that the G2 is decent, we got to have a talk, because there's even better refills out there. You know, and you should really try them. Questions, comments, throw it down below. Hopefully I gave you an intro to the new $29 pen, as well as the subscription, but then also gave you some information on why you want to do certain things to your refills or not, or why you might be seeing me do certain things, or if you have a custom pen, like especially some of these like brands coming out of China that are just like kind of making knockoffs of these other brands. They may not be putting that thought in because they don't actually use the product. And they might not be seeing that. You know, don't support those brands, in my opinion, or give them feedback so they can fix it up. You know, really up to you. Questions, comments on the new pen and any of the stuff I talked about, you know, you're welcome to throw them down below. Otherwise, as always, I'm at the Prophecyst on just about every social media, and we do have our Discord. You can join Prof's Place, and we can talk nerdy pen stuff. Plenty of you have already joined. Some of you, one of you actually bought all my old boxes off me because I use these Keros cubes to store them, and rather than hucking them out, they went to a new home. So always glad, or if I get a pen, you guys are going to be the first ones that get the option to pick it up. If I pick up one and I'm like, I'm not into it, I just want to sell it off, I sell it for what I paid, you get it for a reasonable price. Stuff like that. Doesn't happen that often, but I'd say at least once a year usually happens. And sometimes on some fairly rare pens. Well, as always, see you in the next one. Peace.